Good morning. Welcome to your Sunday morning, early morning intuitive guidance. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum, America's kick-ass coach and psychologist, here with some more taking the war out of our words, so helping people, myself included, do much better with communication, especially in the English language. There's all kinds of setups in the English language that tend to create combat in our conversation, and the book that we've been working on by Sharon Ellison, Taking the War Out of Our Words, The Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication, offers us some remedies for the pitfalls that we've experienced with our language. So, looking forward to tackling this next little part. We've already done the addressing the overt message. Good morning to whomever has popped on. But now we're going to talk about addressing covert messages. Good morning, Cindy. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. We're doing Taking the War Out of Our Words today. And again, what people demonstrate in their behavior often moves us much further than what they say. We pay attention to what people do much more than we pay attention to what they say. Not that we don't go with what they say, but oftentimes if there's a contradiction, we put our eggs in the basket of what they're doing instead of what they're saying. So we'll go over some of that. But let's just take a moment and do a little bit of breathing. Nice deep breath in and out through the mouth. Another deep breath in and out through the mouth. And actually, let's do a round or two of tapping, because as I was laying in bed this morning, I was thinking, it's been quite a while since we've done any tapping, and it's good for just kind of a general flush of stuff that may be getting in the way of our communication. So if we've got built up energy, built up stuff, old wounds, etc., let's do a little flush on that and see where that leaves us in terms of then approaching this part of the book. So what I'd like you to do is tap on the side of your hand by your baby finger, the karate chop spot. I like doing both at the same time. Figure I get double bang for my buck, right? Okay, so now we're going to do 3 setup statements. Welcome to whomever else has joined us. We are doing some tapping first before we jump into our next section of the book. So I want you to just repeat out loud after me. Even though I'm not sure how to change my communication, I'm willing to give it a try. Even though I still carry wounds from past poor communication, I know my communication can improve. Even though some of this stuff in the book is new to me, I am willing to learn new things. Okay, inside corner of the eyebrows. Communication. Outside corner of the eyes. The pitfalls of conversation. Under the eyes. Good morning, Sue. We're doing some tapping on communication. I wish it was easy to talk to people. Under the nose. What I say isn't always what others hear. Under the mouth. What others say isn't always what I hear. Collarbone. I like having tools to clear that up. Under the arm, but there are still those couple of people that I really struggle to talk clearly with. Around the crown of the head, I can learn to deal with them too. Inside corner of the eyebrows, I'm getting better and better at clear communication. Outside corner of the eyes, I know clear communication is for me. Under the eyes, and when communication gets muddy, good morning, Jennifer, we're doing some tapping right now. When communication gets muddy, I am willing to practice my new skills. Under the nose, even if who I'm talking to doesn't know those skills. Under the mouth, even if who I'm talking to isn't willing to learn them. Collarbone, I know these new skills are for me. Under the arms, powerful non-defensive communication. and around the crown of the head. I'm ready to learn more. Nice deep breath in. Let it go. All right, and let's tackle our section. So, again, we're doing Taking the War Out of Our Words, The Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication. Good morning, Susie. Glad you're here. By Sharon Ellison. I wonder if she's wondering why all of a sudden she's selling more books. So, we are on page 151, Interpreting the Covert Message. So, previously, we talked about our responses to people's overt messages. Good morning, Pat. Glad you are here. Welcome, welcome. So now we're going to deal with the covert message, what people aren't saying, what they're saying through their behaviors, through their posture, through their verbalizations, their tone, etc. All of the add-ons that we miss when we're texting. So, my little aside there. If you're in the middle of a conversation via text and it kind of seems like things are getting heated or going south, I will heavily support you saying to that person, can we move this online? Can we do a Zoom on this? Can we get together and talk about it? Can we do it over the phone? At least then you're getting more information, because texting strips out so much of the information. And we already struggle with communication. So if you sense that things are getting dicey on a text message, ask if you can shift to one of the other ways of communicating that'll give you more information so that the conversation can go better. So with regard to descriptions of the overt message, what people are literally saying, we came up with some ways to actively listen that didn't involve repeating the same old saw. Good morning, Carolyn. Welcome. What I hear you saying is, we came up with a bunch of other options. It sounds like you are saying, how I interpret what you're telling me. I assume from what you're saying you mean. Other ways to confirm the overt message of what that person has said. So the example that we were using in there was Nora and Ed. And Nora and Ed are going to continue in this next section, so I want to revisit them briefly so we're refreshed on what it was they were talking about. So Nora says, in a tone that pleads for help, I can weed the garden myself. Ed says, I hear you asking for help. He responds to the covert message, the pleading tone, rather than the overt message, I can weed the garden myself. So, if Ed focuses only on the overt message, I think you are telling me that you feel confident about getting the garden weeded today without my help. He misses the part about the covert message. So we're going to continue with them as we go. So here we are. Well, page 151, if you have the book and you're following along. Interpreting the covert message. What isn't being said, but is being displayed in some other way. The second format only comes into play when we perceive a contradictory message in certain word combinations, tone, or body language. A covert message can slip through unconsciously or semi-consciously. Again, we pick this stuff up. We pick the energy up of someone's not happy even though they're saying they're fine. And we respond to that, and that helps to muddle up the conversation. So, it may even be a conscious message that the person doesn't want to take responsibility for. Nora knows Ed has a major report due on Monday, so she consciously wants to convey that she can do the weeding herself. But her tone imparts a second message she is trying to suppress, that she really would like some help. The irony is, even though Nora is trying to support Ed, her mixed message creates conflict. Okay? When we are on the receiving end of a double message, we often find it hard to respond without getting defensive and hooked into a power struggle. If Ed doesn't believe Nora really wants to do all the weeding, he may say, okay, I just wasn't sure you really wanted to do it alone, then worry all day about whether he should be helping her. Or he might react sarcastically, yeah, right, you look really happy about the idea. Or he might try starting to convince. I know you don't really want to do it without my help. I can get this report done later. Any of those, and we're off to the races on this not going well, right? So the next section is called separating the interpretation of the overt and the covert messages. So you're going to speak to what they said, and you're going to speak to what you're perceiving that they didn't say. When we react to covert messages, we often ignore the overt message and just respond to the covert one. I know you really want help with the weeding. Again, she says she's going to be fine. He doesn't even respond to that. He just responds to the covert message underneath. We also frequently link our interpretation of the conscious message with that of a second and contradictory message. You say you feel fine about doing the weeding, but I can tell you really want some help. So he's making an interpretation there of that mixed message. By linking the two messages with the word but, Ed has used his own observation to discount Nora's overt statement. Not a good idea. So let's keep going so we get some more options here. He draws attention to the contradiction in a way that sounds accusatory, a point-proving habit ingrained in many of us. Again, our way of conversing that we've been taught automatically sets up some of this negativity and conflict to happen. That's why we're working to change taking the war out of our words. When describing our interpretation of a person's covert message, we are better off to state it independently using phrases such as the following. So those of you who were writing down the statements that were potential sentence stems for responding to the overt message the other day, here's another opportunity to write down some sentence stems that can help you respond to the covert message. So if you have a pen and paper handy, here we go. So, as she says, we are better off to state the covert message independently using phrases such as the following. I see. When I look at you. It seems to me. I'll run back through them again. It seems to me. What I perceive. What I am observing is. I notice that. So let me run through those again a little slower so you can write them down if you want to. I see. When I look at you, it seems to me what I perceive, what I am observing is, I notice that. So, thus, instead of using the word but, so I'm going to go back and tell you the but sentence. You say you feel fine about doing the weeding, but I can tell you really want help. Can you see how that might irritate somebody if the person is making that kind of an interpretation? Instead, Nora says, making the assertion, I can weed the garden myself. But again, there's that pleading tone in there. Ed, describing the overt message, it sounds like you are saying you feel confident about doing it without help. Okay, there's the response to the overt. Then, here's his description of the covert. What I see is that you are frowning and that your voice sounds high and intense. He's describing. Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. She put up the sentence stems, so you've got them if you don't have paper and pencil handy. So, again, all he's doing is description. Way back when, 40 years ago, when I was a graduate student, one of the jobs I had was working with parents and kids so the parents and kids would be in the room. Most of them were toddlers or a little bit older, and I had a microphone and a bug in the parent's ear so that I could help train them how to do description. So instead of asking their kid 8,000 questions, which oftentimes, especially if you're dealing with teenagers, pisses them off, feels intrusive, we'd teach them how to do description instead. So, I see you're picking up the red block. I see you're putting the red block on the blue block. You're just describing. It sounds ridiculous, but when you do it, even with adults, when you do it with adults, I see you're putting your coat on. It can get the conversation moving in a direction that you'd like it to, and it also helps people feel seen. Okay? So, Again, in this case, all he's doing is describing what he's noticing. He's not interpreting it. He's just describing it. All right? So, what I see is that you are frowning and that your voice sounds high and intense. That's his description. By describing the two contradictory messages separately, Ed provides clarity without accusation and harsh judgment, and without interpretation, which is good. He does not draw any conclusions about what his observation means. He has removed himself from the bind of either accepting a statement that does not seem true or getting into an argument. Next section is entitled Making Detailed Observations. So again, and this, we're so habitual about this. When I'm working with clients, one of the things that we oftentimes do is what's called an NLP worksheet. And when we've set out a statement of what we want, I am happy, I am content, I am powerful, I am, whatever it is. But the person says, well, I can't quite grasp that, or it doesn't seem real for me, or whatever. We do this worksheet, NLP worksheet, where we're going to describe how are things going to literally look, sound, and feel when this goal is true for you. When you literally are happy, what is it going to look like, sound like, feel like? That makes it more real to your subconscious mind, which is a huge player in how our lives go, okay? A little aside there. Good morning, Maureen. Glad you are here. We are working on responding to covert messages, what people aren't saying, but they're demonstrating, okay? So, vague observations are less powerful, less effective than precise ones. The more precise you can be, the better. Suppose your teenage daughter, is slouched in a chair with a scowl on her face, yet says nothing is wrong. Any of you been there? Only about a bazillion times, right? You might respond to this denial by saying, well, you look upset to me. How does that usually go over? Not so good, right? The word upset is general. It's also interpretive. You're taking her state of being and putting the label upset on it, okay? And that usually pisses them off too, all right? Does not provide her with specific information about what you are seeing that's making you question what she said. Instead, you can say simply and directly, I see you slouched down and frowning. This observation is more neutral, specific, and non-judgmental. You're just describing what you see. She may still not want to own that. No, I'm not. Even as she sits there like this. The joys of teens. Contradictions between overt and covert messages typically fall into three general categories. So we're going to do a little bit on each of those. Contradictions between words and voice tone or body language. Contradictions within a statement. And contradictions among verb elements. Now, those of you who've been tracking along with the book, the verb is VERB, and it means basically values, emotions, reasoning, and behaviors. Any of those can be out of alignment with what's literally been said, okay? So first, the contradictions between words and tone or body language. That's exactly what they just described with the teenager. She says she's fine, but she's sitting there all hunched up and frowning, okay? This is one of the most common discrepancies. If you ask a man for help on a project and he agrees while sighing and rolling his eyes, you might say, I hear that you are saying you feel willing to help me. Pause. What I see is that you are sighing and rolling your eyes. You are using the two formats, responding to the overt and responding to the covert. Good morning, Beth. Glad you're here. Together to describe a perceived contradiction between the person's words and tone. So, if someone's slamming around the kitchen and you ask, would you like some help? No, I'm fine, and they're slamming you can then address that. I hear you saying you're fine, but I'm also hearing the cupboard doors slamming and the tone of your voice is really intense. You're making it clear that the message is contradictory. The overt message and the covert message do not match up. All right. There's also contradictions within a statement. We can make observations about contradictions in a person's actual words. I love this one because this is then I would get told to stop analyzing them. Then I think a reasonable response is, I'm merely putting out there what I'm seeing or what I'm hearing. If you're going to go with, you're fine, absolutely fine. But as you get to the point, how do I say this? When you're doing your response, and she's made this point earlier in the book, so I'm going to reiterate it. When you're giving your response, you're doing so as neutrally as possible. You're not doing so to provoke a certain outcome. So you're not saying it to get them to agree. You're not saying it to get them to do whatever it is you want them to do. You're not saying it to provoke a response. You're saying it merely as a description. So your job in that interaction is to be as neutral as you can be, to manage your own emotional response, which, with a kid, when you are on the 10,000th round of, I'm fine, it's hard not to feel provoked. No, you're not. You're yelling. And so am I. But oftentimes we can take a break, go to the bathroom, breathe, get a glass of water, whatever. Take that step back into our famous curious observer, all right? Step back into curious observer. If I were a fly on the wall and I were watching this interaction between me as parent and that one as kid, what would I see? What would I see? And be as honest with yourself as you can be. Because as parents, we can get kind of sanctimonious, can't we? I'm just trying to help you, blah, blah, blah. See if you can come at it from, yeah, okay. When I was that kid slouched in the chair and my parent approached me and said what I just said to my kid, how did I react? How did I react? Snarly, whatever, okay? So again, this takes practice, this takes time, this takes our conscious effort to let go of trying to engineer how someone else is going to behave, okay? I know, that's scary. With my daughter in particular, my son was a different animal, but with my daughter, if I said A, she said B. If I said, let's do this, she'd go do that. So there was a ton of bucking that went on, and it did not pay to push back at it. All I'd get was more resistance. So oftentimes I would say to her, well, you're bright, you'll figure this out, and I'd walk away. You're a bright girl, you can come up with a solution to this, and I'd walk away. Good morning, Peggy. What then would happen is oftentimes she'd make a poor choice, have negative consequences. I worked very hard not to say, I told you so. If you would have just listened to me. And it did get to the point where she would say to me, if I had just listened to you, and I'd go, I'm not going to put her in that position of feeling defensive because she made a bad choice. And I'd much rather have her make a bad choice at 12 or 14 or 16 than at 22, 24, 26. The mistakes they make younger, oftentimes, yes, some of them have pretty big consequences, but oftentimes it's lower consequences, and they learn from making those mistakes. I'll give you another one. I had a niece who came and stayed with us, and she was, how old was she at the time? Maybe 14. And they were going out rollerblading. And I said, in true mom fashion, helmets and wrist guards and knee pads. And of course, my kids gave me the flack they typically gave me, but they put them on because they knew if I caught them without them on, all of that equipment was disappearing for a chunk of time. Well, my niece pretended to put them on, and they went around the corner, and she didn't have gear on, and she fell and broke her wrist. And as she comes limping back and crying and whatever, I say, in true mom fashion, what did you learn? Wear your wrist guards. Yep, it was a hell of a lesson, but it was a lesson well learned. Well learned. So sometimes we have to let people bang their head against the wall, and we work with ourselves to not be that jerk who says, I told you so, when it goes south. We can see that it's going to go south. let it go south. Let them learn from experience. Experience is so much more powerful as a teacher than our verbiage from experience. We can put it out there. Well, here's what I think is going to happen. Have at it. Do whatever you're going to do. That was a little aside. Okay, so now we're going back to contradictions within a statement and how we can handle that. If your partner says, we're both tired tonight, let's just go out to dinner. At some point, though, we're really going to have to spend less money. There's the contradiction. Let's go out to dinner, we have to spend less money. You might say, it sounds like you're saying you would like to eat out. I noticed that you quickly went on to say that we need to keep a tighter budget. You're just putting the contradiction out in front of them. You're not judging it. You're not saying, what the hell's wrong with you? You're saying you want to go out to eat, and now you're saying you don't want to spend money. That's not going to help. That's going to provoke a fight. But if you point out what you're seeing, so you're saying you'd like to go out tonight, but you're saying we need to save money. Put it out there. Leave it sit. I'm going to teach you a sales technique right now, which is the next person who speaks loses. Say what you need to say. Shut up. And most of us are really uncomfortable with silence. So what I want you to practice is counting in your head. Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2, Mississippi 3, Mississippi 4. Sometimes it'll take a minute or two before the person responds. Just stand there, keep your face as neutral as possible, and count in your head. All right? Let them be the next person who responds. You've already said enough. You've already said enough. You've pointed out what isn't holding together within their statement. Sequentially stating the contradictory aspects makes that contrast more apparent and helps you deal with the issue in a more straightforward manner. You're not judging it. You're simply saying this and this and letting that tension sit there for them to look at. Okay? So now we're going to the third one, the third way that there can be discord between what we say and what we do. Contradictions among those verb elements. Again, verb, values, emotions, reasoning, behaviors. Often we notice inconsistency in a person's values, emotions, reasoning, and behaviors, verb elements, but don't name them unless we are accusing the other person. Now I'll read that part, but I want to give you a little blurb from the book I'm reading right now, which is an amazing read. It is called How to Stand Up to a Dictator by Maria Ressa, R-E-S-S-A. She's a journalist from the Philippines, raised a significant chunk of time and went to school in the U.S., but then went back to the Philippines to try to make a difference and started, she won the Nobel Peace Prize as a journalist. So interesting stuff, but she talks about this. She talks about when you get a group of people together and there's group think going on, and that people will do things in groups that they won't do as an individual. People will violate their values, their morals, whatever, when they're in a group and that group energy is going, okay? So, this one. For example, you might say to your partner, it sounds like you're saying you want to handle the conflict with your mother without my help. That's reasoning. At the same time, you often talk to me about your hurt and anger. So behavior and emotion. So the reasoning thing is not lining up with his behavior and his emotion. So I'll deal with my mother on my own, yet then I'm going to come home from having been with her and dump on you about how crappy it was. Okay? Here, the discrepancy is between reasoning about how to handle the problem and behavior, constantly discussing the emotions that are involved. Your partner overtly says no help is needed, while covertly subjecting you to the stress of the fallout of that relationship, okay? Then we've got the one with the mom and the daughter, Beth and Corey. And Beth trying to get Corey to help with chores around the house. That's the backstory. Rather than arguing with Beth, Corey might say to her, it seems that you believe, value statement, I'm unfair for asking you to do dishes tonight. What I have noticed is that you say I am unfair each time I ask you to help with housework. That's the behavior. Good morning, Diane. Glad to see you. A clear and neutral statement of our observations gives the other person a chance to reflect and also to respond and clarify. It also keeps us out of a no-win situation. That doesn't mean they're not going to respond provocatively. Still, like with my daughter, what typically would have happened if I had said to her, "It seems that you believe I'm unfair in asking you to do dishes tonight. What I have noticed is that you say I am unfair each time I ask you to help with homework." She might go, "Oh, you're so obnoxious," as teens can do. Good morning, Susan. And then I would just come back and say, "I'm merely pointing out that what you're saying isn't matching, and I'm not sure, I'm confused." Oftentimes, it's a good place to start with, "I'm confused. You're telling me you want to do this on your own, yet you're sticking the book in front of my face." It's a homework. "You're telling me you want to do this on your own, yet you're sticking the book in my face as if you want me to give you some guidance. I'm confused." So you can use "I'm confused." That can be a helpful statement too. Let's see. Describing the covert message makes it possible to deal with painful situations with integrity. Perhaps your sister, who has been hooked on drugs, comes to you and pleads, "If you give me a loan, I will pay it back." Instead of arguing with her, you can describe the contradiction between her reasoning and her past behavior. "I understand you to be saying you will pay me back. What I have seen is that you've borrowed money 4 times, failed to pay it back each time, and have never mentioned that money again." And again, you want to do that as neutrally as you can. Real easy to slip into accusation there, but merely describe what you see, okay? When we describe first the overt message, "I want to borrow money," and second, any contradictory messages that come through in tone, body language, words, or actions, you haven't followed through on repaying the other 4 times I've loaned you the money. We simply named each of the messages as we understand them. We have not discussed their contradictory nature or what we think the contradiction means. What we can do with that is the third format. But we're not going to go into that one today because I've gotten really long-winded here. But I'm hoping that you got some useful stuff out of that, because that covert message stuff is so common among us. We say one thing, we mean another. We say one thing, we do another. So these are ways to kindly and lovingly call that out, put it on the table. What you're telling me is, what I'm noticing is, and then letting them have to deal with that contradiction. They may deny it, that's okay. But again, you even pointing it out lets them know they can't get away with trying to buffalo you on that. You're picking it up. You're picking it up. So enjoy some practice with this today. I'd like you to practice with noticing covert messages in people's communication. So it's Super Bowl day. So perhaps your significant other says, "I'd love to help you clean out the garage today," during the time of the Super Bowl. And the message is clearly not that. You can point out that contradiction. Maybe what then will happen is some problem solving. "How about this? I can help you before the game. I can help you after the game. I want to watch the game." Cool. Fine. We can negotiate that. All right. So practice a little bit today. See what you can notice in terms, say what you mean what you say. But I'm also going to say that our English language can set us up that even when we say what we mean, people hear something different, because words can have multiple meanings. How we convey the message can... I have minister friends who say this all the time. I give a sermon and someone comes up and says, "When you said blah, 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 that really moved me." And they never said it. They never said it. Good morning, Linda. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to go eat my breakfast leftovers from yesterday now. It was a lovely breakfast. We're right at the end here. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is pay attention today to conversation and things people say, and notice how many times there is a contradiction between what they say and how they behave, or what they say and what their tone is, or what they say and what they do. All right? Have an awesome day. Good morning, Linda. You're right at the end, but I'll post it right away so you can watch the replay if you want. Have an awesome day. See you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. Bye-bye.